else. Welcome everyone. This is part 4 of our Daniel chapter 11 series. We hope that you've been following us since part 1, where we looked at who is Israel, and we've just been going verse by verse on Daniel chapter 11. Our title for this presentation is The Holy War, Armageddon, and Christ Our Righteousness of the 1888 Message. So where we're going to see the righteousness by faith, how it is connected in this chapter that many people have been talking about lately. Like we usually say, everything that you'll see, we don't own. This is for teaching and just to enlighten people. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And also we're on Instagram and Facebook. We have weekly devotionals, and we also have messages that will help uplift. So please come and join this family that is growing. Again, the Holy War and Armageddon, and Christ Our Righteousness of the 1888 Message. We'll have a word of prayer, and we'll start the presentation. Most gracious Father, we thank you for your love and your goodness. As we unpack this presentation, Lord, we pray for your spirit, for us speakers, that the words that we speak may be of you, and to prepare the heart of the people to receive the message that you have for them. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Carl, for that introduction. And to kind of pick up where we left off ending in verse 45, where it reads, "And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him." And what did we see in that last verse? That none will help him. We've been going over the Eastern question and how Turkey was the king of the North, and how they received help throughout their history after the sixth trumpet. But now, with the expression of none shall help him, clearly implies, as I was saying, that they were previously helped. In the war with France, England and Russia assisted the Sultan. In the war between Turkey and Egypt, England, Russia, Austria, and Prussia intervened in behalf of Turkey. In the Crimean War, England, France, and Sardinia supported the Turks. In the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 and 78, the great powers of Europe interfered to arrest the progress of Russia. And so, with that, we make our way towards Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. And believe it or not, there is a lot of information we're going to be going over in just this one verse. And so, Early, can I have you please read verse 1?
Yes. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Even though that same time, and at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book.
So we have a couple of things that we're going to be going over. We got Michael shall stand up, but who is Michael? Very controversial topic, but I believe that the Bible makes it plain as to who Michael is. We read from Uriah Smith, "Who then is Michael, and what is his standing up? Michael is called in Jude 9 the archangel. This means the chief angel, or the head over the angels. There is but one, Who is he? He is the one whose voice is heard from heaven when the dead are raised, 1 Thessalonians 4:16, and whose voice is heard in connection with that event, the voice of our Lord Jesus Christ, found in John 5:28. So clearly, Michael in this way is Jesus. Not that Jesus is an angel, but that he is the one who is commanding the angels. Very important. And so is Christ reigning now? There's two kinds of kingdoms that we've gone over in past presentations. And so is Christ reigning now? Yes, associated with his Father on the throne of the universal dominion, that was the throne of grace. In Ephesians 1:20-22 and Revelation 3:21. But this throne or kingdom he gives up at the end of this dispensation in 1 Corinthians 15:24. And then he commences his reign, brought to view in the text, when he stands up or takes his own kingdom, the long-promised throne of his father David, and establishes a dominion of which there shall be no end. We are living in the time of the investigative judgment, in which the Father is going to give Jesus the throne of David. So there are two, if you will, him reigning in the throne of grace and the throne of glory. And so what is this time of trouble? Whenever I first studied this, I thought it was talking about in these verses found in Matthew 24 and Luke 21. Carl, can I have you read these verses?
Yes. What is the time of trouble? Matthew chapter 24, verses 21 and 22. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. And then Luke chapter 21, verse 24, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Amen.
And so is this talking about the time of trouble that we just read in Daniel chapter 12? I know this confused me whenever I read the two, because I thought they were talking about the same thing. That's honestly how I grew up understanding it. But then when reading the pioneers, they really made it crystal clear as to what this great tribulation is. And so the great tribulation mentioned in verse 21 is that of the church of Christ, and not the tribulation of the Jews at the destruction of Jerusalem. And we'll eventually be doing a study on Matthew 24 in a future presentation. But suffice it to say that this great tribulation is talking about the dark ages. In connection with the standing up of Michael, there occurs a time of trouble such as never was. In Matthew 24:21, we read of a period of tribulation such as never was before it, nor should be after it. This tribulation, fulfilled in the oppression and slaughter of the church by the papal power, is already past, while the time of trouble of Daniel 12:1 is, according to the view we take, still future. How can there be two times of trouble, many years apart, each of them greater than any that had been before it, or should be after it? These are great questions, because I wish I thought of these questions when reading these. But it is it's just amazing when reading the pioneers' writings, just how well they understood it. And so continuing on with Uriah Smith's explanation of this. To avoid difficulty here, let this distinction be carefully noticed. The tribulation spoken of in Matthew is tribulation upon the church. Christ is there speaking to his disciples and of his disciples in coming time. They were the ones involved, and for their sake, the days of tribulation were to be shortened. In verse 22, whereas the time of trouble mentioned in Daniel is not a time of religious persecution, this talking about Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, but of national calamity. There has been nothing like it since there was not a church, but a nation. This comes upon the world. This is the last trouble to come upon the world in its present state. In Matthew, there is reference made to time beyond that tribulation. For after that was past, there was nothing to be any like it upon the people of God. But there is no reference here in Daniel to future time after the trouble here mentioned, for this closes up this world's history. It includes the 7 last plagues of Revelation 16 and culminates in the revelation of the Lord Jesus coming upon his pathway of clouds and flaming fire to visit destruction upon his enemies who would not have him to reign over them. Wow. And this is
super clear.
It's super clear, super clear, the distinction between the two. And this is proven in Jeremiah chapter 25 and verse 32 and 33. For look what the Lord says about the nations. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, evil shall go forth from nation to nation, and a great whirlwind shall be raised up from the coast of the earth, and the slain of the Lord shall be at that day from one end of the earth even unto the end of the earth. They shall not be lamented, neither gathered nor buried. They shall be dung upon the ground. And so the next question is why is there going to be this time of trouble? A.T. Jones writes, now there comes in another important thought. Why is it that these powers are so certain that they will fight among themselves if the Turkish power should be let fall, that they will spend all their united time, day and night, for more than half a century to keep that power from falling? Here is the answer. When the Turkish power shall fall, there will be most valuable territory to be possessed by some power. Only a few days ago, the London economists said that that territory might and ought to be one of the most flourishing regions on the face of the earth. And since each one of these powers is determined to have all that it can grasp of these territories, it is simply impossible for them to agree upon a division. And therefore they know that there must inevitably be a war among them all, as surely as the Turkish power shall be allowed to fall. And so clearly Turkey is almost like it's holding the winds back, but we know that's the angels holding the winds back.
Mm-hmm.
We know that's the angels holding the winds back. But what we're seeing is a progression of nations are being more angry the further we get along in Earth's history. In Revelation 11:18, Early, can I have you read that, please?
And the nation were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, they that should be judged, and that should give reward unto thy servant the prophets, and the saints and them that fear thy name shall engrate, and should destroy them which destroy the earth.
And so with these nations angry, the culmination of that is going to be what has been termed Armageddon. See, as we've been interpreting Daniel 11, it's all been literal events, Gabriel explaining literal things that are going to happen on the earth. We come down to Armageddon, and that is going to be a literal battle also. In Revelation 16, verse 12, we find Armageddon. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. And the 7th angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. So we got to go over this. There is so much information that just fell upon us, and why are the nations angry? Why are they angry? Turkey is in that remarkable condition that it has now stood for half a century, mainly because the great powers of the world have resolved that for the peace of Christendom, it is necessary that the Ottoman Empire should stand. They came to the conclusion nearly half a century ago. I do not think they have altered it now. The danger, if the Ottoman Empire should fall, would not merely be the danger that would threaten the territories of which that empire consists. It would be the danger that the fire there lit should spread to other nations and should involve all that is most powerful and civilized in Europe in a dangerous and calamitous contest. That was a danger that was present to the minds of our fathers when they resolved to make the integrity and independence of the Ottoman Empire a matter of European treaty, and that is a danger which has not passed away. And so with these nations angry, we have the marshaling of the nations. We have the process of gathering these nations to that battle. The work that is being done by Satan. And so we read from the volume 3 of the Selected Messages. We are nearing the close of this earth's history when 2 parties alone can exist, and every man, woman, and child will be in one of these armies. Jesus will be the general of one army. Of the opposing army, Satan will be the leader. All who are breaking and teaching others to break the law of God, the foundation of his government in heaven and in earth, are marshaled under one superior chief who directs them in opposition to the government of God. And the angels, which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, are rebels against the law of God and enemies to all who love and obey his commandments. These subjects, with Satan their leader, will gather others into their ranks through every possible means to strengthen his forces and urge his claims. So it doesn't matter where you are in this, whether you are part of the apostate Protestantism, whether you're part of the papacy, or whether you're part of Islam, or you're part of those people who keep the commandments of God, you are going to be on one side or the other. And so you have to choose this day which side you're going to be on.
Mm-hmm.
And we have here a quote from Ellen White regarding the Eastern question. For the longest time when I was reading this passage, I didn't know what she was talking about, why she specifically choose these countries. And Carl, can you read the 2 blocks on the left side?
Yes. In India, China, Russia, and the cities of America, thousands of men and women are dying of starvation. The moneyed men, because they have the power, control the market. They purchase at low rates all they can obtain and then sell at greatly increased prices. This means starvation to the poorer classes and will result in a civil war. There will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time, and at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly. And none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand.
Thank you, Carl. So we see here there's a battle for the market, and only those, the moneyed men, those who control the market, are making profits. Just like right now, the wars is some people are making a lot of money, those who are in power, because that's how war is. But also the sanctions really hurt not the country, it hurt the people, the poor class. So as we see more wars, more people will be affected by these things. But now you might say, what's the connection with the Eastern question? So I read the testimonies to the church here. We are to see history in the fulfillment of prophecy, to study the workings of providence in the great reformatory movements, and to understand the progress of events in the marshaling of the nation for the final conflict of the great controversy. So just like we saw with Constantinople, with what Nick presented, this presentation, the last one, is that they want that spot close to the Black Sea for better trade. So if you have that spot, you have better trade. If not, those countries, and that's what Russia wants, that spot. That's why there was the Turkish war, Russian war, all these wars, because they want that spot for better trade. So now how we translate that to the Eastern question is that every country want to be on top. Every country wants to be the one controlling everything. So that's why the Eastern question is so important. So Nick, can you read the title of the article in the bottom and quote on the side?
Yeah, it says India's strategy in the China-Russia-US triangle. We know that the current ties are an outcome of the Russia-Europe and the China-US estrangement, but things can change as they have in the past 60 years. Russia and China have been friends at one time, enemies at another. Likewise, the US, Europe, and Russia. India is the only one that has remained largely with the same perspective that it had in the 1950s. Though the US has listed Russia as being at par with China as its strategic competitor, the reality is that only China is competing, and it is in US interest to keep Russia and China apart.
So we have seen in the news BRICS and all these things. So United States doesn't want these covenant between these countries, but between the countries, they don't even trust each other. It's the interest that's being played out. So now let's read the other section by A.T. Jones that saw all these things as the Eastern question. So Nick, can you read the whole thing?
Yes. In the month of June 1900, the legations of the powers in China were attacked, that of the United States equally with the others. To rescue their ministers, each of these powers were obliged to send an army, the United States equally with the others. This brought the United States as a power into China and associated her there in alliance with the other great powers who, from the beginning, have been the material part of the Eastern question. And in a circular note to all the powers concerned, July 3, 1900, the United States announced to the world that the policy of the government of the United States is to seek a solution which may bring about permanent safety and peace in China, preserve Chinese territorial and administrative entity, protect all rights guaranteed to friendly powers by treaty and international law, and safeguard for the world the principle of equal and impartial trade with all parts of the Chinese empire. This shows that the United States has not only become, but that she intends to remain one of the powers of the East and one of the very chiefest of those concerned in the Eastern question. Wow.
It's so clear, even though you see the article said India's strategy in China, Russia, and USA triangle, and we just saw the quote from Spirit of Prophecy. Now we clearly see how country can be involved into the Eastern question, even though we West. So if you protect your trade or you made a treaty or policy by international laws and all these things, you get involved with that country that's part of the East. And if you attack this country, I'm getting involved also there, just like NATO or all these things. So as soon you touch one, so do you see how Armageddon can come about just for power, money, and all these things? Because every country, if you tie with that one, you can be involved into the Eastern question. And we had said that before, but now we have the article. How is the Eastern question responsible for World War I? It can be argued that the Eastern question caused the First World War. Austria engaged Serbia by annexing Bosnia in 1908. Russia helped to organize the Balkan League of Serbia, Bulgaria, Macedonia, and Greece, which went to war with Turkey in 1912. Militarily, they were successful, but they fought between themselves. So do you see that the Eastern question in the First World War I? So now let's see a little bit of Russia. What did Russia ultimately hope to achieve by expanding into the Ottoman lands in the Balkans? The collapse of the Ottomans and the coming of war. Russia hoped that by gaining influence in the Balkans, it could gain direct access to the Mediterranean Sea. Before 1914, however, Russia was not prepared to risk war to maintain distance. The Balkans was a prime example of both of the threats of nationalism and the threat from weakening power of the Ottoman Empire. So do you see that? So everybody wants Constantinople. So the Eastern question is still alive. You might not hear it, but it's still alive, and we'll see how. So, Nick, can you read?
Says the fall of the Roman Empire. Throughout the Reformation era, Turkey was a continual threat to European Christendom. The writings of the reformers are full of condemnation of the Ottoman power. Christian writers since have been concerned with the role of Turkey in future events, and commentators on prophecy have seen Turkish power and its decline forecast in Scripture. And in 1923, the Treaty of Lausanne, the peace agreement between Turkey and the allies of World War I. The treaty defined the borders of the modern Turkish Republic. Turkey gave up all claims to the remainder of the Ottoman Empire, and in return, the allies recognized Turkish sovereignty within its new borders.
So we see clearly the name that was changed from the Eastern Question to the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923, and we see here. So we even see the Spirit of Prophecy quote that Ellen White has a quote to show you that the Turkish power and its decline forecast in Scripture. She's really talking about that in 1145. So all to say it's coming, and Turkey is really the third woe.
Amen.
Nick?
And that's why the nations are marshaling together for this one event, because of Turkey,
Exactly.
because of its location.
Mm-hmm.
And so why, continuing on with the sixth plague, why the river Euphrates? Why is the river Euphrates mentioned? And so Uriah Smith once again says, it is so used in other places in the scriptures. See Isaiah 8:7 and Revelation 9:14. Remember our 7 trumpet studies when we went over the 5th and 6th trumpets, talking about Islam and how there was 4 sultans occupying the territory around the river Euphrates, which was Turkey. In this latter text, all must concede that the Euphrates symbolizes the Turkish power, and being the first and only other occurrence of the work in Revelation, it may well be considered as governing its use in this book. That's point number 1. Point number 2, the drying up of the river in this sense would be the consumption of the Turkish Empire, accompanied with more or less destruction of its subjects. Thus, we have literal judgments upon men as the result of this plague, as in the case of all the others. But it may be objected to this that while contending for the literality of the plagues, we nevertheless make one of them a symbol. We answer no. A power is introduced, it is true, under the 6th vial in its symbolic form, just as it is under the 5th, where we read of the seed of the beast, which is a well-known symbol, or as we read again in the 1st plague of the mark of the beast, his image, and its worship, which are also symbols. So what they're getting at is, in order for the nations to come together for Armageddon, does the literal river Euphrates need to be dried up? No.
Oh.
No, we got airplanes. We can go over that. The river's not stopping anybody from conquering any nation. But symbolically, what this is talking about the drying up aspect of it, the drying up of the river Euphrates, and what that means.
So just like Nick said, is the nation, it's not the physical, but it's the spiritual aspect that we have to understand. And as the drying up happens for the location of Constantinople, Armageddon will happen. And here we have the United Nation, and we have here a statue with a hammer with a plowshare. So, Carl, can you read the Bible text here and quote?
Yep. Joel chapter 3, verses 9 to 14. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves, and come all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about thither, cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great, multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the Lord is near, and the valley of decision. Amen. Let us beat swords into plowshares. United Nations, New York City. Bronze statue sculpted by Evgeny Wojcik to represent the human wished to end all wars by converting the weapons of death and destruction into peaceful and productive tools that are more beneficial to mankind, which is donated by the UN. to the UN by the Soviet Union.
Thank you, Carl. So we see here in Joel 3, 9 to 14, we have a scene of Armageddon. So United Nations understood that symbol very well, and what they were doing, the weapon of death and destruction, they turned them into peaceful and productive tools. But if we go back to Joel 3, beat your plowshare into sword. So now they're returning this plowshare into swords for Armageddon. And your pruning hooks and your spears, let the weak say, I am strong. So assemble yourself, Armageddon, and come and all he hidden and gather yourself together round about. So all this is preparing Armageddon. So the United Nations had really understood that, and that's why they had sword turned into plowshares. But this time, the plowshare are becoming sword. That means it's the end. It's Armageddon. No more peaceful aspect of us as nations.
It seems like mankind is saying, God, this isn't going to happen. We're converting our weapons into plowshares. See this statue? See what we're doing?
Exactly.
It's almost like Nebuchadnezzar. He saw the vision of the statue of the different metals. And what does he do in the very next chapter? He makes his own statue, all of gold.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the Armageddon is going to happen because when Daniel 11:45 happens, Armageddon, Euphrates have to go down. So for the nations to get that location. So even though we're under United Nations and we say peace, peace, peace, and safety, there will be no peace. So, Nick, can you read that, please?
The drying up, it's the glory of nations or people. The strength of nations and of individuals is not found in the opportunities and facilities that appear to make them invincible. It is not found in their boasted greatness. That which alone can make them great or strong is the power of God. They themselves, by their attitude toward his purpose, decide their own destiny. Every nation that has come upon the stage of action has been permitted to occupy its place on the earth, that it might be seen whether it would fulfill the purpose of the Watcher and the Holy One. Prophecy has traced the rise and fall of the world's great empires, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. With each of these, as with nations of less power, history repeated itself. Each had its period of test. Each failed, its glory faded, its power departed, and its place was occupied by another.
Thank you, Nick. So here the drying up is the glory of nation or people. So what the spirit of prophecy is saying here is that every nation has a rise. God is sending you up in the land, he's rising, but how they get power? With that which alone can make them great or strong is the power of God. So Amen. They have to acknowledge the power of God as a nation, as leaders, as people and individual. But if you don't utilize this power to go towards God, what's going to happen? Falling of Babylon. You're going to fall. You're going to dry out. And that's what is being said here. The strength of nation and of individual is not found in the opportunity and facility that appear to make them invincible. Do you see that? So I'll jump back down. Every nation has come up to the stage. That's the rising up of action has been permitted to occupy its place on the earth. But if you don't fulfill that position on the earth, what's going to happen? Just like Babylon got replaced by Medo-Persia, by Greece and Rome, you're going to go down. But in Armageddon is the final one. This is it. So I hope you understand the drying up better as we go to this presentation. And Carl?
Galatians chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. For brethren, ye have been called unto liberty, only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. But if ye bite and devour one another, take heed that ye be not consumed one of another. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. But, and then Luke chapter 12, verses 45 to 46. But, and if that servant say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to beat the manservants and maidens, and to eat and drink, and to be drunken, the Lord of that servant will come in a day when he looketh not for him, and at an hour when he is not aware, and will cut him in sunder, and will appoint him his portion with the unbelievers. Amen.
Wow, wow, wow. So here, what we're trying to show here is that the liberty of every nation or somebody is to do good. But if you use your liberty to follow the flesh, to take possession of somebody else's house, wife, or nation, people are coveting. We have a presentation on coveting, but this is what's happening here. When you covet, what you're going to do, you're going to devour one another. That's Armageddon. It's the same kind of spirit if you follow the spirit of Christ, and that's what we're talking about, righteousness by faith. You will not fight one another. You'll respect one another. But all these nations, what they want more power, more money, more territories. So they act like they're at peace. But when their opportunity rise, boom, war breaks loose. And that's what we're trying to show in these two texts here. Nick?
And so that continues in our unfolding of the sixth plague of who are the kings of the East. Is this the Eastern question? Is this Turkey? Well, A.T. Jones explains, this in its turn has caused each of these great powers to spread its power over as much as possible of the whole East until now, in this present hour of our own day, these powers, in their grasping of power and influence in the East, have so far absorbed the whole that they all meet face to face in the extreme East at the capital of China. Thus, it is strictly true that the China tangle, as it is today, is the direct resultant of the original Eastern question that began August 11th, 1840. And this greater Eastern question, as it is today, is but the enlarged outcome of the original Eastern question as it has centered in Constantinople for the last half century. And in the nature of the case, there can be no solution of the greater Eastern question as it centers in China, which shall not involve the original Eastern question as it centers in Turkey. This because the greater Eastern question, as it centers in Peking, except only the United States and Japan, are the identical powers of the original Eastern question as it centers in Constantinople. So, who are the original powers that controlled Turkey? It's those nations that helped Turkey. They were the ones who were the originals. But there has been this steady, gradual fighting over the territory of the East because they all want, like Early went over, they want more trade, they want more control. Continuing on, there are, however, two powers reckoned among these principal ones of the greater Eastern question, which were not connected with that question originally, but have become parties to it only lately. These are Japan and the United States. And so when looking at the perspective of the pioneers back in their day, they saw the gradual progression of every nation on the earth becoming interested in the East, in this greater Eastern question. And so it just makes us want to look into this even more to understand why every nation is so involved in this. And that's because they all want that territory. They all want that territory. And that leads into the enlarged Eastern question, which is going to be another presentation sometime, but this topic is just so vast because it's like the principle of repeat and enlarge. And A.T. Jones, he says, as was made plain in last week's study on this subject, this Eastern question, as it centers in Peking, is but the extension and enlargement of the original Eastern question as it centers in Constantinople. And this crisis, which brings all these powers face to face in China, is but the logical outcome of the steps that were taken in 1840, in the crisis which the original of these powers into the position of supporters of the government of Turkey. Thus, the question as it relates to Turkey is the key of the same question in its enlarged form as just now it relates to China. Consequently, the prophecies that relate to the Turkish power in this time are the key to understanding of the question that involves China and the world powers. So by understanding the history around Turkey, we're seeing exactly how Satan is marshaling all the nations to the event of the drying up of the river Euphrates to prepare for the battle of Armageddon. And so why is the river dried up? We know that it's going to happen, but why is the river going to be dried up? A.T. Jones writes, and this occurs that the way of the kings of the East might be prepared, but with the exception of the United States and Japan, these kings of the East are the identical kings that have been the principal cause and substance of the Eastern question from its origin, August 11th, 1840, unto the present hour. How then can the Turkish government come to its end? How can thus this water of the great river Euphrates be dried up except by the action of these very powers? Just like what we went over at the end of verse 45, there is no more help. The river is dried up because everybody wants that territory. They will be uprooted, just like the three horns of Daniel. And that'll prepare the way of Armageddon. And so, who are the kings of the East? Well, whenever we look at the terms in the verses of the sixth plague, we will see that the kings of the East are actually the kings of the world. And so, Carl, can I have you read these two statements?
Yes. Notice here the striking statement and the association of the two expressions in these verses of Revelation 16. The Turkish power come to its end. The water of the Euphrates is dried up, that the way of the kings of the East might be prepared. And these kings of the East are said to be kings of the earth and of the whole world. Now is the truth that three of these powers that created the Eastern question in 1840 with Germany and the United States do actually control practically the whole world. And with these five powers, Britain, Russia, Germany, France, and the United States, all the lesser powers are in some way associated. So it is altogether true that the kings of the East are now indeed the kings of the earth and of the whole world.
Isn't that amazing? He just explains it so perfectly.
Well explained.
Is that it's these nations are just going to consume other nations. They're going to be the ones that are in control. They are the ones who is going to show up at the Battle of Armageddon.
Like the G7.
Yep.
As we read Daniel 11 and we go into Turkey, we can't it always brings us back to Genesis with Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael. Interesting, Isaac means he laughs. In Genesis chapter 17, starting from verse 15, it reads, "And God said unto Abraham, as for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her." Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, "Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear?" And Abraham said unto God, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee." And God said, "Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him." So we see here Abraham not believing what God is telling him. He laughed in his heart. And also, he just changes the whole topic, doesn't focus on that, and he's just bringing Ishmael in the picture. But God says it will happen, and to call him Isaac. Now in Genesis chapter 18, starting from verse 10, we also have a conversation between God and Sarah. And he said, "I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son." And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of woman. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, "After I am waxed old shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also." And the Lord said unto Abraham, "Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord?" It's as if God took that personally, right? "At the time appointed, I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son." He repeats it again, kind of like he did with Abraham. Then Sarah denied, saying, "I laugh not," for she was afraid. And he said, "Nay, but thou did laugh." And so Genesis chapter 21, Isaac is born, and Sarah said, "God have made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me." So Isaac is born. It's as if him laughing is saying, "I get the last laugh. I proved you guys wrong," in a way.
Yep.
And then we'll go to the next slide. Real quick, that Isaac, meaning to laugh, the Hebrew word, the root word actually also is to mock. It means to laugh, but it's also to mock. So remember when Ishmael mocked Isaac, that word mock, actually, that's the same root word where we get Isaac from. So it can mean to laugh, or, Sarah laugh of joy. And it can also means to mock or to play, like when they were mocking Samson before he died. So why Isaac? Why the name Isaac? Why is he mean laugh? How does that connect anywhere? In Psalm chapter 2, we'll read, "Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing?" And just like we were talking earlier, "The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens," who's that? "shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. So you're seeing God laughing now. Those that choose not to trust in him. Those kings of the earth that are trying to go against him, he's going to laugh at them. And we see the same idea as Psalm 37. The wicked plotteth against the just and gnasheth upon him with his teeth. The Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming. And so Ishmael mocked Isaac, even Abraham and Sarah, they kind of mocked him or laughed of disbelief. But at the end, the child of promise, that's where you get the laugh from, because God proves everyone wrong for those that choose to not have faith in his word. And it's the same thing here that we're seeing with Isaac. And it kind of brings us back to the end of time when Armageddon is going to happen and people are going to try to go against God. He's going to come and settle everything and he'll get the last laugh. And so just one last slide on this. In Matthew chapter 27 and verse 30, it says, and they spit upon him and took the reed and smote him on the head. And after that they had mocked him, they took the robe off from him and put his own raiment on him and led him away to crucify him. So like we said, Ishmael, it says it means he laughs, but we also get the word to mock there as well. So we know Isaac being the child of promise, representing Jesus. And we saw how Jesus was mocked especially throughout his life. It says here, even Herod was enraged because Jesus did not appear to fear his power. And with his men of war derided, mocked, and abused the Son of God. All throughout his life, he was mocked, but he's going to get the last say at the end of the day. And that's what it means to be the child of promise, is that you might be in derision, you might be persecuted in this life, you might be put aside, but if you choose to keep trusting in the word of God, well, you will get the last laugh. You will get to be proven right, to be justified, and others to be proved wrong as you choose to hold on.
So if you follow the Spirit, even though people laugh at you in the 7 last plague in Armageddon, is the righteous. And Jesus says, you see, you didn't accept my righteousness. I didn't want to laugh, but this is what's happening when you follow the flesh. You're fighting each other.
Amen. Amen.
And that's why the nations are planning their attack, really, because they're laughing at God. Like that it's the battle between Satan and God. Satan saying, I can rule this earth. You're not coming to take my territory. And so we read from A.T. Jones, and these powers, in centering their interests in the East and planting their armies in the East, are but arraying themselves and marshaling their forces in readiness to march to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. And that will be when, in their distress with perplexity, the Turkish government shall by these powers be let fall, and so the way be prepared for them as the kings of the East to be gathered into that place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. And how are they gathered? What does Satan do to gather these nations? Well, it's under a symbol of the 3 frogs, the deceptive frogs. To many, it may seem incredible that the nation should be willing to engage in such an unequal warfare as to go up to battle against the Lord of hosts. but it is one province of these spirits of devils to deceive, for they go forth working miracles, and thereby deceive the kings of the earth, that they should believe a lie. The sources from which these spirits issue denote that they will work among three great religious divisions of mankind, represented by the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, or paganism, Catholicism, and apostate Protestantism.
So clear
Yeah.
how they're going to be deceived.
So clear. I mean, he's going to bring them together.
Mhm.
It is Satan is in his final deception act of coming down. He's going to be presenting himself as the promised Messiah. He's going to show himself to every nation that, hey, I'm the creator. I'm the one in charge. This is my city. And they're going to believe a lie, unfortunately, because they didn't read their Bible, they didn't study, they didn't surrender. And so the frogs have an interesting origination found in the plagues that happened in the times of Pharaoh in Egypt. In Exodus 8, verses starting in verse 6, Early, can I have you read this, please?
And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And the magician did so with their enchantments, and brought up frogs upon the land of Egypt. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod, and smote the dust of the earth, and became lice in man and in beasts. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not, so there were lice upon man and upon beasts.
And in this story, we see the example that this is Satan's final deception. The magicians could not produce the next plague afterwards. They only were able to replicate the frogs. And so we see that Satan is deceiving the world through spiritualism. He's deceiving the world in his last act of deception. And Ellen White writes, John in the Revelation writes of the unity of those living on the earth to make void the law of God. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is the Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. And that is so that the world will be deceived. And it didn't just start in the sixth plague. Satan has been going about progressively, with the culmination being the final act of deception, which is him coming down. That's him coming down and convincing the nations. But he's been working towards that event to happen. And we have to look back at Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Revelation 11 on the times of the Gentiles. This was so amazing whenever, obviously God led me to this, because you just wait, it's going to blow your mind. In Matthew 24, verses 20, starting with verse 21, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. And that event happened after the Great Tribulation. So taking things in order, you have the Great Tribulation, and then afterwards we have men saying, "Lo, here is Christ, believe it not." False Christ arriving, false prophets. All right, let's continue with the times of the Gentiles. So the times of the Gentiles, Luke 21, verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. In Revelation 11, verse 2, but the court which is without the temple leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. In Ezekiel 30, 1 through 3. The word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Howl ye, woe worth the day, for the day is near, even the day of the Lord is near, a cloudy day. It shall be the time of the heathen. And so there are many people who are applying these verses to the Jews, to the literal Jews. And that's why it's important that you watch our part 1 so that you can understand who the Jews actually are, that there is a distinction between Jews of the flesh and Jews of the spirit, because there's a deceptive act that's happening. And there's a reason why it can't be applied to the Jews. James White, in his commentary on these verses, if this tribulation be applied to the Jews or any other class of unbelieving men, it cannot harmonize with Daniel 12:1, which speaks of the time of trouble such as never was, when Michael shall stand up. Certainly, there cannot be 2 times of troubles as at different periods greater than ever was or ever would be. Therefore, we apply the tribulation spoken of in Matthew 24, 21 and 29 to the Church of Christ, extending down through the 1260 years of papal persecution, and the trouble mentioned in Daniel chapter 12 verse 1 to the unbelieving world to be experienced by them in the future. The period of tribulation was shortened for the elect's sake, who were not the Jews. No, their house had been pronounced desolate. They were left of God, and their hardness of heart and blindness of mind, says Paul, Lo, we turn to the Gentiles. The elect were the followers of our Lord Jesus Christ. And where were they when tribulation was upon the Jews? They had fled to the mountains. How absurd, then, to say that the days of the tribulation of the Jews in the city of Jerusalem were shortened for the sake of the elect who had fled from the place of tribulation. And this is very important to understand, because there has been this trend of the reestablishment of the old Jerusalem. And funnily enough, it happened in 1844. The Great Awakening that happened with the Advent movement, Satan had his counterfeit in this movement. And so we read from the Edict of Toleration. In February 1844, there is a question on the status of Jews apostates from Islam, who it was claimed must pass through being Christian on the way to Islam in the first place, and on March 21st, 1844, appears in translation. It is the special and constant intention of His Highness the Sultan that his cordial relations with the high powers be preserved, and that a perfect reciprocal friendship be maintained and increased. The Sublime Porte engaged to take effectual measures to prevent henceforward the execution and putting to death of the Christian who is an apostate. According to Muslim Islamic scholar Cyril, death for apostasy in Islam was not in practice enforced in later times in the Muslim world, and was completely abolished by a decree of the Ottoman government in 1260 AH or 1844 AD. This short edict was advanced in the wider Ottoman Reform Edict in 1856. So what is this saying? That the times of the Gentiles was fulfilled. That's what these people are saying. The times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. It is time for the Jews to go back to their land. It is time for the Jews to take the territory that is theirs by right. That is what they are saying. And that's what you even see today happening.
Mm-hmm.
It is theirs by right. But we've already looked at it. They have been pronounced desolate.
Mm-hmm.
So let's continue on. It just gets even more amazing. In 1844, the Edict of Toleration was the beginning of the Zionist process of Jewish diaspora return to the Holy Land with its removal of capital punishments for apostasy. An Irish convert to the religion, George Townshend, was the first broadly published to mention the edict in Baha'i literature in 1944 when he wrote, "The proclamation of his faith was made in 1844, the year when the strict exclusion of the Jews from their own land, enforced by the Muslims for some 12 centuries, was at last relaxed by the Edict of Toleration, and the times of the Gentiles were fulfilled." Clearly, we're seeing Satan doing his best. 1844, we have this wonderful message, Jesus going to the most holy place, and here he is. Nope, this is talking about the literal Jews. The times of the Gentiles has been fulfilled. The Jews are going back to their nation. And it goes even further. The edict was first publicly commented upon by Reverend Edward Bickersteth in his publication Practical Guide to the Prophecies in the 1844 edition. Adventist William Miller and those that disagreed with him, though unaware of the edict and the diplomacy around it, still looked to the fortunes of the Ottoman Empire even in the period. Miller pointed to the year because of the 2300-day prophecy of Daniel 8:14. Relying on the day-year principle. The 2300 days are understood to represent 2300 years, stretching from 457 BC, the calculated starting date of the 70 weeks prophecy based on the third decree found in Ezra, thus leading to 1843-1844. Bickersteth acknowledged the same interpretation and added a second, Ezekiel 4:5, as a parallel to start the clock for understanding Revelation 9:15, taking 390 years as a period for persecution of Christians in the end time. Continuing on, it just gets more amazing. Bickersteth takes this persecution from the triumph of the Ottoman rule of Constantinople in 1453. Thus, 1453 plus 390 is 1843-44, directly before these events. Thus, independently of Miller, a number of Christian authors followed the significance of this declaration from Bickersteth, including Alfred Edersheim, a Jewish convert to Christianity and a biblical scholar, and Henry Grattan Guinness, who broadened the theme of the understanding of the edict and its importance into the early 20th century, with Worth Smith, who mentioned it in his 1934 Miracle of Ages. Adventist mention of the edict wasn't until 1917. What is amazing is this is talked about not in Adventist literature, but in somebody else's literature.
Exactly.
So they understand all this. And they're putting this twist on what is actually happening instead of truly understanding who are the Jews. It's Satan's final deception, and they're following a pattern. They are following a pattern of old. When the Jews went into Babylonian captivity because they were committing adultery against God, God was calling them out, and he did it through Cyrus. Cyrus releases the Jews, and God calls on Cyrus by name in Ezra 1 through 11. The Ottoman Sultan in 1844 releases the Jews. Both decide to stay in the land of the enemy. The Jews did not go back in 1844, although they had this edict. They prolonged their stay, and they went and they were in other nations, and they suffered a lot of persecution because of it. And after some time and the persecution from nations, the Jews return home to rebuild. One is an edict from God, but the other is an edict from Satan to trick the world, saying that, hey, look, prophecy is being fulfilled.
Wow.
While we have God saying, back in the Babylonian captivity, his prophecy, his way, and Satan's like, nope, nope, nope, nope, nope. It's this. And the world is taking it hook, line, and sinker.
So they don't focus on the heavenly sanctuary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. So they don't focus on the heavenly sanctuary. They're focused on rebuilding the sanctuary here on earth. The temple, the third temple here on earth. And we read the Sultan releasing the Jews. The chains of the Jews are unloosed, and they are elevated to the rank of men. The Sultan of Turkey, following the march of civilized nations, says to the Jews in his dominions, "You are free. You have my permission to build a synagogue at Jerusalem." To the Jews, this great revolution has been a wonderful manifestation of God's providence and watchfulness. It has made them men, citizens, a people, a nation. It has given them rank, position, power. It has elevated them to the highest offices. We have passed through the promised punishments. Wow. And what did we read in Matthew 24? What did we read in Matthew 24? Ellen White goes over this and explains it perfectly. Listen to this. Many false messiahs will appear, claiming to work miracles and declaring that the time of the deliverance of the Jewish nation has come. These will mislead many. Christ's words were fulfilled. Between his death and the siege of Jerusalem, many false messiahs appeared. But this warning was given also to those who live in this age of the world. In our time, in 1844, in the time of the end, this was given. The same deceptions practiced prior to the destruction of Jerusalem have been practiced through the ages and will be practiced again. And she goes a step further. She even says that Jerusalem shall not be built again. I also saw that old Jerusalem never would be built up, and that Satan was doing his utmost to lead the minds of the children of the Lord into these things now, in the gathering time, to keep them from throwing their whole interest into the present work of the Lord, and to cause them to neglect the necessary preparation for the day of the Lord. It is clear Satan's final deceptive act is convincing the world that the literal Jews and the literal rebuilding of their third temple is of importance and is fulfilling prophecy. That's how he's gathering the nations.
And they're losing all the nations are losing focus of the investigative judgment, what's happening in heaven. And they have no clue. And that's why Satan wants people to focus on the land and rebuilding. Everything's happening here, guys. Don't focus on the cleansing of your record.
And that's why it's important that we have to understand the Eastern question. We have to understand the heavenly sanctuary, the investigative judgment, and we also have to understand the role of the papacy in the United States in the end times also. Amen. It is the culmination of all these things that give us this beautiful picture of what is God trying to tell us when the end is going to be.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that, Nick. In John chapter 8, in part one, we talk about the real Jews, something we definitely need to go back to. And I think that will definitely help us understand not to be deceived. Really, we need to study our word. But in John chapter 8, verse 34, it reads, Jesus answered them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is a servant of sin. And the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth ever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. I know that ye are Abraham's seed, but ye seek to kill me, because my word have no place in you. I speak that which I have seen with my father, and ye do that which ye have seen with your father. So remember, those that are servants of sin, they don't abide in the house forever. Meaning they abide for a time, but not forever. But the Son, he gets to abide forever. So again, we go back to Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac in Genesis chapter 21, starting from verse 8. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking, as we talked about earlier. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. So you see, cast out who? The bondwoman. Remember? The servant, and what was Jesus talking about? Servant of sin. So Egypt representing bondage to sin. So Ishmael was in the house for a time, but after Isaac was weaned, and because of what he did, showing that he was still a servant of sin, he was cast out. And Galatians chapter 4, verse 29, Paul writes, But as it then he was born after the flesh, persecuted him that was born after the spirit. So this mocking is really a form of persecution. John chapter 12, verse 24, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. So just like you can be Abraham's seed, Ishmael was Abraham's seed, but Ishmael did not die at that point. Ishmael, they could not bear much fruit because he did not die. And so in Acts chapter 8, verses 1, we're going to see. So we know that the Muslims, the Arabs, they claim to be descendants of Ishmael. And Saul was consenting unto his death. And at that time, there was a great persecution against the church, which was at Jerusalem. And they were all scattered abroad throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles. As for Saul, he made havoc of the church, entering into every house, and hailing men and women, committed them to prison. Therefore they that are scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word. Now we have to remember, the house, the church of God is us, is the people. So although they were the one that moved, but it was really the Jews that were cast out. In Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, remember, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish this transgression and to make an end of sin. They chose to be servants of sin after the killing of Stephen, and therefore they were cast out. Remember, the servant of sin cannot abide in the house forever. So although they kept the territory, they were not part of God's people anymore. And we even see that in heaven with Lucifer, Revelation chapter 12, starting from verse 7. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was there a place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So you're seeing this over and over again, that same theme there. So Ishmael, in a way, in this sense, represents, those that choose to be in sin and that don't want to let go, and therefore they have to be cast out in the wilderness, which we see here. So
And
go ahead.
yeah, and also when you were saying that, what came to mind was when they asked for the blood of Jesus to fall upon them and their children.
Exactly.
Agar went to the desert with a son.
Yes.
So they putting after, if you after the flesh, you will have the same consequence of Agar going in the wilderness. And that's why God said to them, your house will be left desolate. It's a desert.
It is. It is a desert. Just like you remember the earth, is like a wilderness, which is Satan get cast out in the earth.
Exactly.
So you're seeing that same theme every time. But does that mean you're lost? Does that mean all the descendants of Ishmael, they were cursed and they had no, future? Well, the word Ishmael, look what it means. And the angel of the Lord in Genesis chapter 16, verse 11, said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord have heard thy affliction. And then now let's jump to Genesis chapter 21, verse 17. God heard the voice of the lad. This is after Ishmael was cast out with his mom. And the angel, because of what he did to Isaac, mocking him. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said unto her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard who? The voice of the lad, the voice of Ishmael, where he is. Amen. So although you're cast out, you're not forgotten. God can still hear you. Just like the
Amen.
Jews right
Amen.
now, as a people, he won't use them anymore, as a nation, sorry. But Jews can be converted. They can accept Jesus as their savior. God will hear them as they humble themselves and cry out unto the Lord. And that's the beautiful thing. We even see this in Ham, although despite what he did, that didn't curse, his descendants, like generations to come. As long as you choose to cry out to the Lord in affliction, God will hear you. And it's not all lost for you. So to me, you see the righteousness by faith, and all these stories. Ishmael, even him, he wasn't fully lost. In his latter days, he repented of his evil ways and returned to his father's God. But the stamp of character given to his posterity remained. The powerful nation descended from him was a turbulent, heathen people who were ever an annoyance and affliction to the descendants of Isaac. So although they took these things, bad characters from their father, just like all of us who are born in sin, we can overcome because Jesus overcame as we choose to cry out to him.
Thank you, Carl. And yes, it's so true. So we see the battle between the flesh and the spirit. So Jerusalem belongs to who now? But his people were unfaithful. And when the Lord of light came to his own temple, he was despised and crucified, and the holy city and the site of the sacred temple passed into the hands of the Gentiles. So the land of Israel is no longer, it was for the Gentiles because they despise Jesus, the Lamb of God. They were degraded, shunned, and detested if the brand of Cain were upon them. Yet I saw that God had marvelously preserved his people and scattered them over the world that they might be looked upon, specially visited by the curse of God. So being dispersed throughout the world, it was a reminder that they despised Jesus. But like Carl said, you still can come back. I saw that God had forsaken the Jews as a nation but that individuals among them will yet be converted and be enabled to tear the veil from their hearts and see that the prophecy concerning them has been fulfilled. They will receive Jesus as the Savior of the world and see the great sin of their nation in rejecting and crucifying him. So it's pretty clear that even though the land doesn't belong to them anymore, but we know it was forced in 1948, God wanted them to come back by being scattered, being a diaspora, like throughout the world, to come back to Jesus.
It seems like what's happening is the world and the Jews trying to go back to their homeland are trying to act like Abraham. You know, if God won't give me a son, I will do it myself. And then they come up with Ishmael. They're trying to fulfill a certain prophecy that God has given, in which it's, oh, well, we're going to rebuild the third temple when we know that the temple is coming from up above.
Amen.
Amen. So I am from above, ye are of this world. So Nick, can you read E.G. Wagner's comment and after these two texts on the side?
Of course. Then did not God himself lead them into bondage? Not by any means, since he did not induce them to make that covenant at Sinai. 430 years before that time, he had made a covenant with Abraham, which was sufficient for all purposes. That covenant was confirmed in Christ, and therefore was a covenant from above. See John 8:23. It promised righteousness as a free gift of God through faith, and it included all nations. All the miracles that God had wrought in delivering the children of Israel from Egyptian bondage were but demonstrations of his power to deliver them and us from the bondage of sin. Yes, the deliverance from Egypt was itself a demonstration not only of God's power, but also of his desire to lead them from the bondage of sin, that bondage in which the covenant from Sinai holds men, because Hagar, who is the covenant from Sinai, was an Egyptian. And in John 8:23, and he said unto them, Ye are from beneath, I am from above, ye are of this world, and I am not of this world. And Ellen White says in The Desire of Ages, but today in the religious world there are multitudes who, as they believe, are working for the establishment of the kingdom of Christ as an earthly and temporal dominion. They desire to make our Lord the ruler of the kingdoms of this world, the ruler in its courts and camps, its legislative halls, its palaces and marketplaces. They expect him to rule through legal enactments enforced by human authority.
So we see here that all these things that's happening, people who follow after the flesh want something here. And that's why John 8:23 says, and he said unto them, Ye are from beneath, I am from above. Ye are of this world, I am not of this world. And that's why Christ wants us to look up. And that's why the covenant of Galatians is, if you follow Christ, you from above. If you follow Hagar, you from below. So I hope you start seeing righteousness by faith through this Eastern question. And Carl, can you read this for us?
The two covenant, one from above and one from below. And Galatians chapter 4, starting from verse 22, for it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by promise, which things are an allegory. For these are the two covenants, the one from the Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Hagar. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai and Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children, But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of promise. But as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the spirit, even so it is now. Nevertheless, what saith the scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free. The city of Jerusalem is no longer a sacred place. The curse of God is upon it because of the rejection and crucifixion of Christ. A dark blot of guilt rests upon it, and never again will it be a sacred place until it has been cleansed by the purifying fires of heaven. At the time when this sin-cursed earth is purified from every stain of sin, Christ will again stand upon the Mount of Olives. As his feet rest upon it, it will part asunder and become a great plain prepared for the city of God. John 17, verse 14, I have given them thy word, and the world have hated them, because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Amen.
Thank you, Carl. So we see the New Jerusalem is from above, and Agar is from below. A free woman, a bondwoman. And how do we prepare to go above? It's in John 17:14. I have given them thy word, and the world hated them because they are not from the world, even as I am from the world. So if you accept the word of Christ, what's going to happen? You're from below. And we saw with Nick what he presented with the Sultan. He was trying to give them something from below. Turkey. The Sultan was give them from something to keep them in bondage. Israel, being created the state in 1948, is from below. Waiting for Christ to come and be in the temple, again, is from below. So you are under a different covenant, a false Messiah, and there are many with different doctrine that keep people below. So it's very important to understand all these aspects. Nick?
Yes, Old Jerusalem, the glorious land. The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, for ye are strangers and sojourners with me. Leviticus 25:23. Nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Matthew 5:35. The sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet, and they shall call thee the city of the Lord, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel. Isaiah 60, verse 14. Then I was pointed to some who are in great error of believing that it is their duty to go to Old Jerusalem, and think that they have a work to do there before the Lord comes. Such a view is calculated to take the mind and interest from the present work of the Lord under the message of the third angel. For those who think that they are yet to go to Jerusalem will have their minds there, and their means will be withheld from the cause of present truth to get themselves and others there. I saw that such a mission would accomplish no real good, that it would take a long while to make a very few of the Jews believe even in the first advent of Christ, much more to believe in his second advent. Amen.
So, thank you, Nick. So the Old Jerusalem, that's how God called it for now, is still the glorious land, just like part one, but the land is his. The land is mine. So Matthew 5:35, neither by Jerusalem, for the city of the great king. So we see the only way God will purify it is when he's coming back on Mount Olive, when his feet touch the mountain and the mountain go asunder. So from that, and the fact that Jesus walked on this land, so the sole of thy feet, thou shalt call it the city of the Lord, the Zion, the Holy One of Israel. So do not focus right now on Old Jerusalem. but look up above righteousness by faith, the covenant that Christ made from the son of the promise, Isaac, and pointing to Jesus. So I hope it's getting clearer. Carl?
With that being said, we also see many religions, that are from below as well, who are focused even on the land here. Like, for example, the Hebrew Israelites. While members do not consider themselves Jewish, they claim an ancestral connection to Israel. And you read some articles where a lot of them right now are, after a lot of struggle in Israel, dozens of African Hebrew Israelites, they faced deportation. So they actually started moving to that area. And, after facing many injustice, now they're being sent back. Their focus is really to be in Israel. So an example of the covenant of below. And we also have the Nation of Islam, where we see a lot of popular figures here, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Louis Farrakhan, and even the founder, Elijah, well, not the founder, but the one that followed the founder afterwards, Elijah Muhammad, which is another religion that they believe in Allah as well. What I found interesting for the Nation of Islam is the founder, which is Wallace Muhammad, also known as Wallace D. Fard, was the founder. He was the founder. He arrived in Detroit in 1930 with an ambiguous background and several aliases, and thought an idiosyncratic form of what he considered Islam to members of the city's Black population. And then in 1934, so after 4 years, he disappeared from public record. And then he was succeeded by Elijah Muhammad. So no one really know where he came from. And he just started preaching. He was a salesman. He would sell to these people in Detroit, mostly specifically the Black community. He was Caucasian, by the way, and then, saying that he came from Mecca, although that could not be verified. And, he started this religion that is what we know today as the Nation of Islam. Pretty interesting that this happened, especially after the Blacks. Most of these Blacks that he was preaching to were people that came from the South, after, independence.
Wow. So it sounds like a liberation theology.
Exactly.
So
with the Jesuit.
Yep. They want to liberate people, but they're not on the covenant from above. So they fall into something else, trying to find freedom again.
Amen. And even from that, from the Nation of Islam and their teaching, you get the 5% nation, or the nation of God. So pretty much what they believe in is 5% come from the notion that only a mere 5% of all of humanity know the real truth about existence. And they believe all these people are the African American or Black people that are part of that 5%. And they also believe in Allah. So it's interesting how it was spreading. These beliefs was spreading all throughout, and even anyone that came from these situations, Satan has a way to present you, to try to elevate you, present you a lie. And why I kind of like brought up the whole 5% is because it has a deep root. Hip hop comes from that. A lot of their beginning. The 5%ers dominated rap's golden age. Wu-Tang Clan, which is a very popular group in hip hop, it was very deeply rooted in 5% doctrines. Even the Nubian nation, their roots are from they've been influenced by the 5%ers. So we're seeing how all these different ideologies, these different beliefs. They're all coming from, these religions that are focused on below, on the covenant below, more so than the covenant above. And we have this text, Stephen Askell, on the Moors, and we'll find out what they are a little bit. And the 12th of Revelation, where the same deliverance is mentioned, it is stated that the earth helped the woman, the church, and it did indeed. Powers that were wholly unaccountable for the good they were doing were used by the Father to break those bands that Satan had placed around the truth. The suppression of the Bible had led to the suppression of all learning. There were no schools for the masses. There were no books, no papers. Physicians were forbidden to practice medicine, lest they should take money which would otherwise go into the coffers of the church. Should any man dare to advocate learning or cross the beaten paths made by the church, he was led to the stake. But it could not always be so. God made use of the Moors who had accepted Mohammedanism to help deliver his people. Schools were established by them in Spain and Western Asia. The sciences were taught, and from these schools, the light of learning broke into Egypt. So we're seeing here how God is using these African Muslims. They were mostly in North Africa, and they occupied Spain for a while, and God used that. They also have a branch here in America, and you see them involved in the music industry as well. And they have their own practices, their own temple.
And so, all of these things that is happening for Satan's deception, trying to fulfill what he says is going to happen instead of, letting God be in control. Everybody's wondering, why isn't Jerusalem restored yet? We are even wondering, a lot of us in the Christian church are wondering, why hasn't the temple come down yet? Why hasn't Jesus coming again? And that is what has prompted this study, is that by understanding the Eastern question and the message of Christ our righteousness, we realize why it hasn't been restored yet. I saw that Jones and Wagner had their counterpart in Joshua and Caleb. As the children of Israel stoned the spies with literal stones, you have stoned these brethren with stones of sarcasm and ridicule. I saw that you willfully rejected what you knew to be truth, just because it was too humiliating to your dignity. I saw some of you in your tents mimicking and making all manner of fun of these two brethren. I also saw that if you had accepted their message, we would have been in the kingdom 2 years from that date. But now we have to go back into the wilderness and there stay 40 years. This is Ellen White commenting on us rejecting this message of Christ our righteousness. The pioneers were preaching the Eastern question, but we rejected the one message that brings about the end. We rejected the gospel, which we read in Matthew 24, verse 14. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. You see, we're presenting this because we want you to understand when the end will come, but there is something prohibiting the last verse of Daniel 11 from being fulfilled, and that is because we failed in our duty towards the message of Christ our righteousness. And we also see that with the Eastern question and with these studies in Daniel 11 and all of our previous studies, all of our previous presentations, all of it is summed up in the message of Christ our righteousness. We read from Ellen White, As Christ's ambassadors, they are to search the scriptures, to seek for truths that have been hidden beneath the rubbish of error. And every ray of light received is to be communicated to others. One interest will prevail, one subject will swallow up every other. Christ our righteousness. And that includes the message of the Eastern question. There are things that I'm even learning in this presentation by what Early and Carl are bringing out, because the subject is just so vast, so vast. And you can study and just be amazed at how precise God is and how he doesn't want us to be drawn away in deception, because every topic is swallowed up in this wonderful message of Christ, our righteousness.
Amen. Amen.
Mhm. It's interesting. You saw that how Wagner and Jones were pretty much persecuted by the church, and
Yeah.
it shows, like, it brings you back to Genesis, as we were talking, where we said that Isaac was mocked after he was weaned. When you're weaned now you don't need the milk anymore. You have understanding, and then you start being persecuted as well. So when you're preaching the gospel, when you understand the gospel, you are going to be mocked, you are going to be persecuted, and you have to stand strong if you believe.
Amen. And just like Nick was saying about what would have bring the end is righteousness by faith, preaching the gospel of Christ, the medical missionary, all these aspects would have brought the end. But because we rejected that, God could not let Turkey move his last piece going to Jerusalem. And we have two great men, two pioneers that we both respect, Uriah Smith and James White. And the Eastern question wasn't a fable, and righteousness by faith wasn't a fable. Both brought something, and I would like Nick to read both statement on both sides, Uriah Smith and James White.
Of course. On August 5th at 11 a.m., the first 2 pages were written. Sunday, after I had spoken to the crowd, the evening meeting was largely attended. Elder Smith spoke with great clearness, and many listened with open eyes, ears, and mouths. The outsiders seemed to be intensely interested in the Eastern question. He closed with a very solemn address to those who had not been preparing for these great events in the near future. Elder Smith spoke on the Sabbath question to a large congregation this morning, and this evening he speaks on the Eastern question. I feel so grateful that Brother Smith is not lost to the cause. He seems fully and thoroughly united with us. Seems like Brother Smith of old. Oh, thank the Lord, praise his holy name, that his love, his wondrous love, has been exercised toward the children of men. It is so dark, I must stop. Will write you tomorrow. And then James White on righteousness by faith. I have had the question asked, what do you think of this light that these men are presenting? Why, I have been presenting it to you for the last 45 years, the matchless charms of Christ. This is Ellen White talking. This is what I have been trying to present before your minds. When Brother Wagner brought out these ideas in Minneapolis, it was the first clear teaching on this subject from any human lips I had heard, excepting the conversations between myself and my husband, James White. I have said to myself, it is because God has presented it to me in vision that I see it so clearly, and they cannot see it because they have never had it presented to them as I have. And when another presented it, every fiber of my heart said, Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Nick. So we see here how God led James White way before 18 Jordan Wagner on the subject of righteousness by faith, and he used to have this discussion with his wife. And Elder Uriah Smith came also with the Eastern question. He has been studying, the pioneer was studying together, and even Josiah Litch knew who was the king of the North since 1838, 1840. They already knew. So it was a accumulation of knowledge of history that led the pioneer to believe in the Eastern question. So now a lot of people says, how come we don't hear about the Eastern question in our churches enough? So it's because both of them made small mistakes. James White made a mistake and Uriah Smith made a mistake. It's just like David and Solomon. David killed Uriah. He made a mistake, but he was still a God of God, like a man of God. And sometimes because we make a mistake, what people do, they erase everything that you did that was good. And we cannot do that because they were studying together. And Carl, can you read the yellow sections?
Yes. Why is it that Brother Smith and Brother Butler have not received it and have not united with him and heralding it? Sorry. Yesterday, Wednesday, the meeting was held in my room in the office, and Elder Smith read the letter I had sent him, read it to them all, and said he accepted it as from God. He went back to the Minneapolis meeting and made a confession of the spirit he had occupied, casting on me very heavy burdens. Brother Rupert confessed also, and we had a very profitable, excellent meeting. Brother Smith has fallen on the rock and is broken, and the Lord Jesus will now work with him.
Amen.
And then we have for James White, an Eastern question. It is our opinion that any power that reigns over Syria is for the time being the king of the north spoken of in Daniel 11. Hence, that the Turkish dynasty is now that power. If Russia, Austria, England, or France should become possessed of supreme power over Syria, then it, whichever it might be, would become the king of the north. Till then, none but the Turkish dynasty occupies that position, in our opinion. All agree that these feet are not Turkish but Roman. And as we pass down to the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the beast with 10 horns, representing the same as the great image, again, all will agree that it is not Turkey that is cast into the burning flame, but the Roman beast. So of chapter 8, all agree that the little horn had stood up against the prince of princes is not Turkey but Rome. And all these lines thus far, Rome is the last form of government mentioned.
So thank you, Carl. So we see here that Uriah Smith rejected righteousness by faith at first, but he repented. And what did this? What the Ellen White said? Brother Smith has fallen upon the rock, and he's broken, and the Lord will now work with him. So it wasn't, his prophecy wasn't off, but he rejected that specific message. That was the problem. And because of that, a lot of people reject Daniel Revelation, everything he wrote. And he was studying together. And James White, the problem of James White here, we see clearly that he accepted that the king of the north was Turkey at first. But because he knows by the end of the Fourth Empire, it will be Rome, he had a little battle in his mind, but there's other reason that we might not list now, why he then accept Turkey as the king of the north. And just to say that he was not completely in disagreement of the king of the north being Turkey. So we wanted to put that those two messages are very important and they are very connected. Righteousness by faith is the message that will bring the Eastern question to its close. So
I also want to mention that the one thing, I'd say the biggest difference, though, is that James White's salvation was not forfeited because he did not have a correct understanding of the Eastern question.
Exactly.
While Uriah Smith, if he had continued his course in rejecting the message of righteousness by faith, would have lost it. And so while they are connected, we must make sure that we accept the message of righteousness by faith.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. So we see that the Daniel 11 focus, the theme is restoration. When we saw that before in part 1 with Israel. Daniel 2 is the restoration of the kingdom. Daniel 7, the restoration of the king. Daniel 8 is the restoration of the temple. And Daniel 10 to 12 is the restoration of the people. And that's very important. And we see righteousness by faith, character of Christ reproduce. And Eastern question is the close of probation. Then 11 is the restoration of the people during the investigative judgment, when the character of Christ shall be perfectly reproduced in his people. So do you see that in 11 now? It's for the people after the investigative judgment. Probation is closed. Then he will come to claim them as his own. That's what he's trying to do right now. And just like Nick said, righteousness by faith is the most important message. And we see here also, we're going to give other points about Turkey, is Balaam, the sick man, and the road to perdition. We know, we don't know where Balaam came from, but as we study the Eastern question, we saw clear things about Turkey. So Nick, can you, Carl, can you read for us?
Yes, in Numbers chapter 22, starting from verse 5, he sent messengers, therefore, unto Balaam the son of Beor to Pethor, which is by the river of the land of the children of his people, to call him, saying, Behold, there is a people come out from Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against me. Come now, therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. Peradventure I shall prevail that we may smite them, and that I may drive them out of the land. For I wot that he whom thou bless is blessed, and he whom thou cursest is cursed. Balaam, who lived in Mesopotamia along the Euphrates River, named Pethor in Turkey. And then in Deuteronomy 23, verse 4, because they met you not with bread and with water in the way when ye came forth out of Egypt, and because they hired against thee Balaam the son of Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse thee. Amen.
So we see Balaam wanted to curse the people of God, and it's the same thing in the end of time. And where he was from? Turkey. And you see on the map, Pethor is in Turkey. And how many times God trying to stop him? 3 times. And we have 3 woes with the Ottoman Empire. So we see all this. And was he a well man? Because Balaam seems like Turkey, like a sick man of Europe. And we see in 2 Peter 2:16, but was rebuked for his iniquity, the dumb ass speaking with men, voice forbade the madness of the prophet. So you see a similitude with the sick men of Europe, the sick men of the East, and many times, so 3 times, the ass went in a big way, and it was getting narrow and narrower. And the second one in verse 24, the angel of the Lord stood in the path in the vineyard and well-being on the side and on the wall on that side. And the third time, it became narrow. The angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place where was no way to turn either to the right or to the left. Close of probation. He came from, the donkey could have space, less space on the end. This is it. You don't want to serve me, Balaam. I'm trying to serve you. I'm trying to save you also. Balaam owed his life to the poor animal and had treated so with cruelly. The man who claimed to be a prophet of the Lord was blinded by greed and ambition. You know, we talk about the Euphrates, the rise and the fall of nation. and that he could not discern the angel of God visible to his beasts. The God of this world had blinded his mind of them which believe not. 2 Corinthians 4:4. Like Balaam, they were angry at those who would prevent their ruin. And we saw who stood in his way, an angel, just like Michael. He's going to stand up. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Balaam because he went and he sent his angel to stand in the way and slay him for his presumption folly. So we see the donkey, and we know the donkey is also associated with Islam. And I'm just going to read an NLT. The son of yours will be a wild man, untamed as a wild donkey. He will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. He will live upon the hostility against all his relatives. So again, we see the donkey, but we see Balaam as the donkey. He has the temperament of a wild donkey. So just like the sick man of Europe, we covered that already. And why we know his probation was closed, just like Daniel 11:45, and it's because of Numbers 22:32. And the angel of the Lord said unto him, wherefore hast thou smitten that ass these 3 times? Behold, I went and I withstand thee, because the way is perverse before me. And withstand, if you see what withstand stand for, is adversary, Satan. So he became like Judas. He lost his way completely because God was trying to prevent that from him. And perverse is precipitate, push, just like Lucifer went down. All this to show that he was not all there. He wanted all this, just like the Ottoman Empire, the 3 wars, the 3 caliphate is like a wild donkey, and the 3rd war come quickly. Carl?
And as we're talking about Turkey, I don't know if you guys saw, archaeologists in Turkey have made a discovery unearthing what they believe could be the remains of a vessel resembling Noah's Ark. And that's a picture of what they found here in the article, which is in Armenia. In case you didn't know, Armenia was the first Christian nation. Before converting to Christianity, Armenians used to be pagans and worshiped various deities. Gregory the Illuminator was the one to bring Christian belief to the Armenian people. And after he saved the king, the royal family converts to Christianity. So that's how Armenia, where we found the Ark of Noah. So a lot of different things, which we'll touch on at another presentation. A lot of different things happen in that land, in that area, that's related to Christianity or even the Bible. Pope Francis speaks of genocide in Armenia. The remark is the 2nd time the Pope has referred to the killing as genocide, following a similar statement in 2015, which angered Turkey. Turkey reacted furiously last year when Francis, during a Mass St. Peter's Basilica, said that the massacre were widely considered the first genocide of the 20th century. So we're seeing the beast here and the king of the north going at it. We can't hear you.
Sorry. So we see here now why Daniel 11 is talking most likely about the king of the north, king of the south. We know from scripture where Abraham came from. And Nick, can you read these verses here, please?
Yes. And say, thus saith the Lord God unto Jerusalem, thy birth and thy nativity is of the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite, and thy mother a Hittite. Ezekiel 16:3. Hittite, descendant of Het. Het equals terror. Genesis 10:15. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Het. The nation descended from Het, the second son of Canaan, once inhabitants of central Anatolia, modern Turkey, later in North Lebanon, king of the south. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. When Israel was a child, then I loved him, and called my son out of Egypt.
So we see clearly here when Abraham and his wife Sarah came from the Amorite and the Hittite are Turkish. So the Hittites were also in the Canaan land also, but you see where they came from, and Hittite means terror. And what we fighting now? Terrorism. So we see here what's the rise of Turkey is happening. So all these connection that those pioneers, they were not doing fables. They were not on fables, teaching these things. So I hope you see these connections.
Yes, and talking about North and South, it's interesting that, going back to Isaac, that he didn't go to the north. Actually, he couldn't go, and why? Abraham said unto him, Beware that thou bring not my son thither again. So remember, he was looking for a wife, and he asked for his servant to go back to where he came from to get him a wife, because he didn't want to take a wife from the Canaanites. Only bring not my son thither again. And the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and swore to him concerning that matter. And the servant took 10 camels of the camels of his master, and departed, for all the goods of his master were in his hand. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia unto the city of Nahor. So remember, even Jacob had the chance to go to north when he ran away after this deception. The excuse that was used was that he was going to get a wife, and he was allowed to do so, but not Isaac. And Isaac did not even go south. Remember in Genesis chapter 26, when there was a famine in the land, beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, What? Go not down into Egypt. Dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and I will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. So Abraham came from Mesopotamia and then came to Canaan. And after a while, because of the famine, he went to Egypt and came back. So north and south he touched. And then Jacob was born in Canaan. He fled to Mesopotamia, was with Laban for a while, came back to Canaan, and then went down to Egypt where he died. But Isaac, on the other hand, never got to go to Mesopotamia and never went to Egypt, even there was a famine. He remained in the promised land, because he was a child of the promise. So we're going to touch a little bit more on that. Genesis chapter 15. It says in verse 17, And it came to pass that when the sun went down, and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. And the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land. From where? From the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. So that was pretty much the borders, the river. And then in Exodus chapter 23, it reads from verse 31, we'll just focus on the yellow text. And I will set thy bounds from the Red Sea, even unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and thou shalt drive them out before thee. And then Joshua chapter 1, starting from verse 2 to 4, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your feet shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea toward the going down of the sun shall be your coast. So as you see the map here on your left, you see pretty much from Euphrates and even all the way down to Egypt, the border in Egypt, from the river. You're saying that all of that was to be given to the children of Israel. That was the glorious land or the promised land. And so in Joshua 24, starting from verse 2 to 6, that's a pretty popular chapter. It says, Joshua said unto all the people, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, your fathers dwelt on the other side of the flood, and old time, even Terah, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nachor, and they served other gods. So this is talking about Abraham. So this is clearly when they were in Mesopotamia. And I took your father Abraham from the other side of the flood and led him throughout all the land of Canaan and multiplied his seed and gave him Isaac. And I gave unto Isaac Jacob and Esau, and I gave unto Esau Mount Seir to possess it. But Jacob and his children went down into Egypt. And I sent Moses also and Aaron, and I plagued Egypt according to that which I did among them. And afterward I brought you out. And I brought your fathers out of Egypt, and ye came unto the sea, and the Egyptian pursued after your father with chariots and horsemen unto the Red Sea. Now we'll jump to verse 14. Now therefore fear the Lord, and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood. That word flood can also be river or stream. And in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord. So when it's saying the other side of the flood, it's also talking about, from Mesopotamia and Egypt, it says at the same time. Whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorite, and whose land ye dwell. So north, they had idolatry, which is why God called them out from the north. And south, they also had idolatry, which is why God called them out to come into Canaan. And I found this very interesting in Genesis chapter 14, verse 13. And this is the first time we see the word Hebrew. And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew. What does Hebrew mean? It means one from beyond, or one from the other side of a river. That's what it means. So the Hebrew, that's where they came from. From Abraham's side, they came from the other side of the Euphrates, and from even after when Jacob, his descendants were in Egypt, from the Nile, from the other side, they came. So that's what the understanding of the word Hebrew. And I found that, so we don't want to be on the north. We don't want to be on the south. God is calling us out to be right in the middle, right in the midst, which is where the promised land was. So why did God choose this land for them? Well, in Solomon's time, in the days of Solomon, the kingdom of Israel extended from Hamath on the north to Egypt on the south, and from the Mediterranean Sea to the river Euphrates. Through this territory ran many natural highways of the world's commerce, and caravans from distant lands were constantly passing to and fro. Thus there was given to Solomon and his people opportunity to reveal to men of all nations the character of the King of Kings, and to teach them to reverence and obey him. To all the world this knowledge was to be given. Through the teaching of the sacrificial offering, Christ was to be uplifted before the nations, that all who would might live. So you see, God is always thinking about gaining the world. So he's always positioning his children and a place where they can influence many, in order to bring them back to him. You know, in First Kings chapter 4, verse 20, Judah and Israel were many as the sand which is by the sea and multitude. And Solomon reigned over all kingdoms from the river unto the land of the Philistines and unto the border of Egypt. So it says Judah and Israel were many as the sand. Where did we hear that from before? Genesis chapter 22, verse 17. That in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and what? As the sand which is upon the seashore. So this is when God was talking to Abraham, and he made that promise. That promise was really fulfilled during Solomon's time. You know, really, like, everything was supposed to come together during Solomon's time, where God was going to use his people to be a light to the Gentiles. And we'll see that in the next slide. And, you know, that's when we had the temple. The temple was set up, and the people, they were big enough as far as population wise and number in order for them to have an impact. Placed at the head of a nation that had been set as a beacon light to the surrounding nations, Solomon should have used his God-given wisdom and power of influence in organizing and directing a great movement for the enlightenment of those who were ignorant of God and his truth. And he had the opportunity. We read about, you know, we know the king, the Queen of Sheba that came to see him, and all these different kings that wanted to, you know, mingle with him. In Isaiah chapter 49, verse 6, it reads, I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth. So we see why God had his 7 churches in Turkey. Now that Israel became desolate, God is using a different territory in order to spread his good news.
And here we have Uriah, the faithful Hittite. Remember when David killed Uriah for Bathsheba, and David sent his inquirer after the woman and said, is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And Hittite is Turkey. So there's faithful Arabs in the world that will join the movement, because Uriah never defiled himself. Uriah was a watchman. Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. And Uriah said unto David, the ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servant of my lord are encamped in the open field. Shall I then go into mine house and eat and drink and lie with my wife? He had temperance. He was focused on the mission. And we need to be focused the same way in this in history. And his lower passion was under control, because David was trying to force him to drink and all this so he can be drunk and go to his wife so he can cover his sin. And he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. Who made him drunk? David. And even he went out to lie in his bed with the servant of his Lord, but he went not down to his house. So you can read 2 Samuel 11 on your own time to show. So Hittite Uriah was a faithful Turk. And we have the Rechabites. I'm not going to read the story, but many Muslims still claim the descent from Rechab, along with the nearly universal claim of Arabs to be descent from Abraham through Ishmael. So what the spirit of prophecy said, Rechabites were commanded for their ready and willing to obedience, with God's people refuse to reprove by the prophet, because he had spoken unto them, but they had not heard, because they had called unto them, but they had not answered, Therefore, God pronounced judgment against them. So what was the test of the Rechabite is they were trying to force them to drink wine, and they didn't drink wine. God come in, I read the yellow part, but they said, will not drink wine. For Jonadab, the son of Rechab, our father, command us, saying, he shall not drink wine, neither he nor your sons forever. So another place of Turkey is Abraham's burial. I'm not going to read all this, but he had bought the sepulchre, the burial for Sarah, his wife, at the hands of a Hittites, a Turk, in Genesis 23. So do you see Turkey now in all these stories? So I'm not going to spend all that, but it's just to show you it was that burial was for his descendant. Isaac, Jacob saved us. So they were all buried there. But did Abraham find his land at the end? No. So Nick, can you read Hebrew 11, 9 to 16? I mean, here.
Yes. By faith, he sojourned in the land of promise as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had an opportunity to have returned. But now they desired a better country, that is, a heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. Amen.
So righteousness by faith, once again, is from above, and it will come down at some point. So Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah. So we see here in Genesis 25:9, Machpelah means double or portion. So we're speeding up. So the probation of the people of God, and we'll read the Spirit of Prophecy quote here, the light of that Daniel received from God was given, especially for these last days. The vision he saw by the bank of the Ulai and the Iddekel, the great river of the Shinar, and now in process of fulfillment, and all the events foretold will soon come to pass. So what was the Ulai? If you look at the Ulai, it was in Turkey. So Spirit of Prophecy said here, when therefore the influence of God should be withdrawn from the king of Persia, no power on earth could help them. This thought was made emphatic when the rough goat was seen to meet the ram on the bank of the river Graticus. Wealth and arm and influence were without veil. So when you look at Graticus, on the map here is Turkey. So close of probation. So God is trying to tell us, just like Daniel 11:45, it's about to happen. And Iddekel is the same concept, the restoration of the people. And Iddekel is found in Daniel 10:4 and 14. I was by the side of the great river, which is Iddekel. And now I come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days, thy people. So God is looking for the restoration of the people. So when he restored them in Daniel 12:1, and at that time Michael shall stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. So close of probation. And the mark of the beast, and we saw Shinar, is final probation. Those who will not be sealed and they will not be the people of God. They will be considered lost forever. The mark of the beast, captive in Satan's house forever. Remember when the deportation happened in Daniel 1:2, he had carried onto the land of Shinar, the house of his God, and brought his vessel into the treasure of the house of God. So Babylon, the church that is Babylon elected together with you, salute you. So dot Marcus, my son. So Rome is also the great Babylon that will keep people captive. So we just saw a parallel between the people of God and Islam. Sarah, free woman, Agar, bondwoman. The 12 tribes are from above. The 12 princes are from below. The 3 angels' message from above, and the 3 woes from below. The 4 angel, the 4 sultan, is from below, and the 4 angels holding the winds are from above. Time prophecy for Israel and time prophecy for Islam. The church have horses, and Ishmael and the Arabs are like locusts, like horses. So you could see the full parallel of all this. When can we have power with God and with man? Is by surrendering to Jesus, Michael. And he had power over the angel and prevailed, and he wept and made supplication unto him. He found him in Bethel, and there he spake with us. So this is how we overcome. The sin-erring mortal prevailed with the majesty of heaven. He had fastened and his trembling grasp upon the promise of God, and the heart of the infinite love could not turn away the sinner's plea. And another thing about Turkey quickly, when they were leaving Egypt in Genesis 14:2, speak unto the children of Israel that they turn and then came before Pi-Hahiroth between Migdol and sea, and over against Baal-zephon. Before it shall he encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. So Baal-zephon is the Lord of the North. And where's the Lord of the North? In Ugarit, the coastal border of present-day Syria and Turkey, the North. So there's all the stories in the Bible pointing to the king of the North being Turkey. And Carl, can you read this?
Yes, Psalm chapter 83, verse 6. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Agarenes. If Egypt, a modern Arab nation, is contemplated in the prophecy, it may be included under the Hagarites, as Agar, mother of Ishmael, was an Egyptian, Genesis 16:1. In addition, Ishmael's wife was also Egyptian, making the Ishmaelites 3/4 Egyptian.
So thank you, Carl. We're not going to read all this, but we see here even the South has Muslim again. Absalom's mom, Makkah, was from Syria. And we know that David had many wives, and she was from Syria. And it's funny that her son, Absalom, he's the one who went after his father and wanted to have war in Jerusalem. But David was smart enough to escape Jerusalem to have the war outside. David knew well that Absalom was ruthless, men who value power over the principle. He didn't want the city of Jerusalem to become a battleground, strike the city with the edge of the sword. So he fled the city. But we also know Absalom came to his end. So again, the same Arab aspect of Turkey coming to his end, because we know on the caliphate, other Arab nation will join Turkey in the revolt. So Mosque is where the mosque is right now. And what they want to remove it to build their third temple. So we see the war that's happening in Israel right now. This is the biggest plan. And Nick, can you read that right here?
Yes. The synagogue, destroyed by Jordan in 1948, is not far from the compound known to Muslims as the Noble Sanctuary and to Jews as the Temple Mount. It was the site of the second temple built by King Herod during Roman times. Palestinian leaders claim the rebuilding of the synagogue signals the start of an attack on the Al-Aqsa or Aqsa Mosque in the compound to make way for the construction of the third temple. To many, this spot in East Jerusalem, holy to Muslims and Jews, is the heart of the conflict. The Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque sit on the spot where the ancient Hebrews built the Second Temple before it was destroyed by the Romans nearly 2,000 years ago. The recent reconstruction of the Hurva synagogue nearby has sparked new tensions.
So do you see clearly, if you attack the Alpha Mosque, that's when you're going to build the third temple. And this is what we're seeing right now in all these wars. And we see here the Solomon temple, in 4294, we see here the messenger of the Allah said, Jerusalem will flourish when Yarib is in ruin, and Yarib will be the ruin when the great war occur. The great war will occur when Constantinople is conquered, and Constantinople will be conquered by the Jala appear. So all to say, they already know it's written in their own book. But we know promotion come neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but from the north. And we saw that the Seleucid Empire from the east got the north, but they want also Jerusalem. So why the papacy and the king of the north's connection? We know the son was created on the throne with the father, and the heavenly throne, holy angel was gathered around them. The father then made known that he was ordained by himself that Christ, his son, should be equal with himself. So do Arab respect Jesus? They say Allah has no son. So we see here the same controversy between Muslim and Satan in heaven, not respecting Jesus. And we will read the second yellow part. His son, he had invested with authority to command the heavenly host. Especially was his son to work in union with himself in the anticipated creation of the earth, every living thing that should exist upon the earth. So also Jesus was going to be the ruler of the earth. So the papacy wants to rule the earth, not only Jerusalem. He wants everything. But the Muslim, they want Jerusalem. That's where they want to be. So all to say, we see the two aspects of the papacy and the king of the north connection. And we see here, praise Allah, who was not taking a son and had to prepare his dominion, has no need of a protector or weakness, and glorify him. And we saw the papacy, they want to stay here. They don't even think the New Jerusalem will be from heaven. This is the church destination, is the Bible said, the New Jerusalem paradise. So just like many religions. So we see here, papacy wants the global, the earth, and Allah want, and the Muslim want Jerusalem. Carl?
That's why they're called the Antichrist.
Exactly.
Amen.
And so as we start to wind down, we're people might start wondering, well, how is those Muslim countries, these Arabs, are going to join with the papacy, given that the beliefs are different? Even here, you see a lot of these countries, they produce oil. A major oil exporter is hosting a UN climate summit. Arab countries to launch new climate initiatives at COP28. So we're seeing a way that both can agree and work together.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was reading, the COP28 is happening this year. Last year was COP27 in Egypt, and this year is going to be in Dubai. It is the second time in 2 years that the conference was held in the Middle East. So, this whole thing, which is from the United Nations, we're seeing that twice in a row, they're going to countries that are in the Middle East. So you're seeing there's a work that's happening there so that they can get in line. And Revelation chapter 17, verse 17, it reads, "For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled." So somehow, some way, they're going to align with the papacy's agenda. And
that's the mark on the hand, Carl.
Yes, it is.
It's still Sunday.
They don't have to worship it, but
climate change is enough to agree with the beast. And that's why we see all these cope in those Arabic countries. So there's a clear connection with the Eastern question with climate change, also the papacy ruling at the end.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Also in 1 Kings chapter 10, it says Solomon had horses brought out of Egypt and linen yarn. The king's merchants received the linen yarn at a price, and a chariot came up and went out of Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. And so for all the kings of the Hittites and for the kings of Syria did they bring them out by their means. So Solomon, and you can go back in the presentation on the seat and 666, we see that which can represent the papacy, because he's the one that kind of brought the temple on the earth. Definitely recommend to go back. We won't have time to really break it down, but Solomon is using his merchants, buying from horses from Egypt and then selling them to the kings of the Hittites, which were in
the north king of the south,
and then also selling them to Syria, which is all the way up north. So Solomon is controlling everything. So what we're saying is, you might not think that there's a relationship, but all these merchants that we're seeing, even these oil companies that might seem like they're going against the climate change agenda, all these merchants, they're controlled by the papacy. Revelation, I believe chapter 18 is clear on that also. 1 Kings chapter 11, but King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, woman of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites. So he had all type from different nations. So we're seeing how even the papacy, the same way, will have a connection with all the kings of the earth.
Yeah, and this is why the three angels message is so important, that God wants to reach everyone, not only the Jews after the flesh, so they can be circumcised from the heart, but also the Arabs. And we see in Acts 2 that God was after the Medes and the Egyptian and the part of the Libya, the Syrian, the stranger of Rome, Jews, proselyte, Cretes, and Arabians. We do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of God. So under the three angels' message, we need to reach these people because they're from Abraham. Both of them apostatize, the Jews and the Arabs, and they're fighting for land. They're not fighting for above. So we have to bring under the three angels' message the clear message of Christ, our righteousness, the 1888 message to all nations. And that's why the Sabbath will play a major role. Papacy keeps Sunday, we keep the Sabbath, and Muslim keep Friday. And we see the sign of the Muslim is the moon and star, no sun. And the papacy, they worship the sun, but it's not the sun of righteousness. So both are not touching the sun of righteousness. So it's really important. And Nick, the yellow part.
The role of the papacy has of persecuting God's people is given in Revelation 13 and 17. The role of the papacy has of persecuting God's people, as given in Revelation 13 and 17, must not be confused with the role of Turkey, the king of the north, has of signaling to the world what next event follows. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. This movement on the part of Turkey is a signal for the standing up of Michael. That is, it marks this event as next in order. Amen.
So we see that Uriah Smith and James White had their part to play, but also we see the proper order here. And we kind of covered that already. And we ending now. So the king of the north, if you realize, the real true king of the north is Jesus, beautiful for situation, the joy of the world earth is the Mount Zion, and the side of the north, the city of the great king. So this is on the side of the north, the city of the great king. And we know the king of the north is Turkey, but we know they were from the east, but because they took the position of Lysimachus, they became the king of the north. So what does Jesus do at the end of time when we all go to heaven and we're going to be from above? He's going to remove his Mount Zion, his capital, his city, to come down on this earth and on Mount Zion, where the glorious land is right now. And we saw he has to refine it. And this is the same move that the Turkish power is doing. But a lot of people confuse the king of the north and the side of the north. And the side of the north is Satan trying to usurp the throne and the power that we have. Also the table of shewbread where the congregation is. All this to worship, to receive worship. But the king of the north on earth is Turkey. But Jesus is the only one who is both. And, you know, maybe, Carl, can you read the middle quote, I turned to look?
I turned to look at the company who were still bowed before the throne. They did not know that Jesus had left it. Satan appeared to be by the throne, trying to carry on the work of God. I saw them look up to the throne and pray, Father, give us thy spirit. Satan would then breathe upon them an unholy influence. In it there was light and much power, but no sweet love, joy, and peace. Satan's object was to keep them deceived and to draw back and deceive God's children.
So when the people of God moved into the most holy place in 1844, October 22nd, some people then moved and they were by the throne on the side of the north, the table of shewbread, and they were receiving false worship. It was a false worship. So just to say that, we just want to make that clear, that people sometimes confuse the king of the north and the side of the north. And we saw that the New Jerusalem is from above, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride. And isn't it funny that Turkey wants to do the same thing, remove his palaces to go to Jerusalem? So Satan is pushing Turkey to do the same thing like God. He plants his tabernacle of his palace between the sea and the glorious holy mountain, but he shall come to his end and none shall help him. But in Armageddon, Jesus will come with his palace, but who will come to their end? The wicked. And that's what we need to understand. God will succeed by planting his palace, but Turkey will not, because they are not under righteousness by faith. So we leave you with the quote here: Satan consult his angel, And then with this king and conqueror, mighty men, they look upon as the strength and number of their side and declare that the army within the city is small in comparison with theirs, and that it can be overcome. And they lay their plans to take possession of the riches and the glory of the new Jerusalem. So,
Mercy.
so is the same counterfeit with Muslims. So Turkey and Rome are parallel. One hates the Son, one and the other one mention the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, but they want that worship of the Godhead, but under Trinity. So all this to say is the same Armageddon that will come, and also after the 1,000 years, there's another Armageddon. So you see all these replica here. So I don't want to read too much, but there is a new Jerusalem, the metropolis of the glorified new earth, a crown of glory in the hand of the Lord, and a royal diadem in the hand of thy God. So, so that's it. So, Nick?
And yeah, I'm really impressed with how cunning Satan really is in his deceptive act. And we really need the message of Christ our righteousness. And we're teaching this to you guys, those who are watching this. And we want you to understand that the end is near. And it's nearer than what you could even imagine. And when building this presentation, I stumbled upon this video and I was like, Early, we got to put this in. Carl, we got to put this in, because if this isn't prophecy just being fulfilled right before our eyes, I don't know what is, because we can't wait to accept the message of Christ our righteousness. If there is a time, it is now. It is now to accept Jesus as your Savior, to accept Jesus who died for your sins and was raised again, so that we may be raised again also, to live with him. And so I just want you guys to listen to this video. We want you to listen to this video so that you can feel the urgency upon which you need to accept Jesus, your Savior.
Dün Ukrayna-Rusya savaşında katledilen siviller için timsah gözyaşları dökenler bugün binlerce masum çocuğun ölümünü sessizce seyrediyor. Yahu Ukrayna'da ölenler için gözyaşı döktünüz de Gazze'de ölen bu yavrular için niçin sesiniz çıkmıyor? Ey Batı, size sesleniyorum. Siz yeniden bir hilal Haçlı mücadelesi mi estirmek istiyorsunuz? Eğer böyle bir gayretin içerisindeyseniz biliniz ki bu millet ölmedi. Bu millet dimdik ayakta. Ve yine aynı şekilde, aynı kararlılıkla Libya'da neysek, Karabağ'da neysek, bilesiniz ki Orta Doğu'da da oyuz. Şimdi aynı hakikatlere Gazze'de şahit oluyoruz. Batı dünyası Gazze'deki çocuk, kadın, masum katliamını meşrulaştırmak için siyasetçisinden medyasına seferber oldu. İsrail tam 22 gündür açıkça savaş suçu işliyor. İsrail, biz de seni savaş suçlusu olarak dünyaya ilan edeceğiz. Şimdi bunun hazırlığı içindeyiz. Bunun çalışmasını yapıyoruz ve savaş suçlusu olarak İsrail'i dünyaya tanıtacağız. Şimdi açık konuşuyorum. Bilhassa son 10 yıldır terörle mücadele adına ne yaptıysak, hangi başarıyı kazandıysak bunlara rağmen gerçekleştirdik. İnşallah Bundan sonra da bir gece ansızın gelebiliriz şiarıyla kendi çizdiğimiz yolda ilerlemeyi sürdüreceğiz. Öyle ki Çanakkale şehitleri listesinde Gazze verdiği 53 şehitle bugün sınırlarımızın içindeki şehirlerin çoğunun üstünde yer alıyor. Ama bizi kanımız kadar, canımız kadar, sevdamız kadar kendimizden olan tüm bu topraklardan ne yazık ki ayırdılar. Sadece fiziki olarak ayırmakla kalmadılar. Zihnimizden ve kalbimizden sökmek için de her türlü fırıldağa çevirdiler. Milyonlarca insanımızın hayatını kaybetti. Milyonlarcasının evlerini bırakıp Anadolu'ya sığınmak zorunda kaldığı kara günlerden o aldığımız dersleri asla unutmamalıyız.
So thank you guys for listening. We know it was a little bit long, but the righteousness by faith message with the Eastern question was so important to us. We had to put it together. I hope you were blessed, and I hope you will bring the end with the gospel of love, the love of Christ to every nation, people, tongue, that's the message we need to bring, because everybody's from Abraham. And we just need to go by faith to the promise that Isaac was the symbol of Christ, the Jerusalem from above. That's what we need to look up to, and do not reject the Eastern question and righteousness by faith. So thank you for listening, and we have our final song.
Look for the way, as you journey on. Look for the way, passing one by one, down through the ages, past the kingdom's fall. Where are we standing? Look the way, my soul. Look for the way, the great prophetic waymarks, down through the ages, past the kingdom's wall. Look for the waymarks, the great prophetic waymarks. The journey's almost home.
Nick, can you end with a word of prayer?
Absolutely. Father, thank you for letting us endeavor in this study, Lord, and for understanding just how close we are to the end of time. I ask that you be with us all, Lord. Bring us closer together. Let us press together, Lord. Let us press together. Let us come closer to you so that we may receive your righteousness, Lord, because that is what is salvation. It is your Son, Lord. May we look to these events, and may we commit our lives to you quickly, Lord. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for watching.